I have never met anyone who says they don't like the look of film. And the fact that we have these incredible digital camera systems nowadays, technology is so advanced, yet people still shoot on film, just goes to show what an incredible look it has that is so very difficult to replicate. Now, if you want that look, getting into film photography has a pretty low cost of entry. You can get a used film camera on eBay and a roll of film for pretty cheap. However, film is expensive. There's no denying it. The price keeps going up. And if you are shooting paid projects, it can be a little stressful to shoot those on film because you just don't know what you're gonna get. Usually it's a beautiful surprise, but it's still a surprise. So if you want the look of film, but you don't want the price and the uncertainty, you kind of have two options, right? You can invest in a camera system that can replicate the look of film, like the Fuji system, or you can get film emulation presets, which really vary in their quality. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're really bad, and a lot of times you just don't know until you can try it out on one of your photos. So today we're going to look at something called Dehancer. This is a film emulation plugin, and we're gonna see how it stacks up to actual film and whether it's worth the investment for you and your workflow. So what makes Dehancer a little bit different is that it's not actually a film preset, it's actually a plugin. So it kind of works like a program within a program. And the programs that it works with are Capture One, Photoshop, Lightroom Classic, and Affinity. So I've pulled aside some photos and we're just gonna go through those today, edit them together so you can kind of see how Dehancer works, and I'll give my thoughts and opinions at the end. So I do a lot of my editing in Lightroom Mobile now, and I realized after I downloaded this that it is only for Lightroom Classic. However, the way it works in Capture One is the exact same way it works in Lightroom Classic, so I'm just gonna show you in Capture One. And they actually suggest using Capture One because of its superior raw processing capabilities, which I have also actually noticed in my photos as well. So I usually use Capture One for my paid commercial project, and then I'll use Lightroom Mobile for my personal stuff and travel, just because I have it on my phone and it's easier. Personal preference. Okay, so over here I have loaded in some photos, just a good mixture. So I'm gonna go to this image here first because it's just so cute. Now, they also have raw processing recommendations. So you see over here in style, I have the auto curve right now. I believe they suggest the linear response, but you can see it makes my photo pretty dark. So I like to just do this film extra shadow to bring out a little dynamic range. And then they suggest that you do just any other light adjustments like white balance, exposure, dynamic range before you take it into the Dehancer plugin. So I'm gonna do that really quick. Now what I'm going to do to take it to Dehancer is right click, edit with, and then Dehancer Lightroom plugin. And now you'll see this is kind of like a program within a program. The Dehancer plugin pops up, and now we'll use this to edit our photos. So this also confused me when I first started using it. There are two major modules, presets and profiles. Presets you can go through, and these have a lot of different settings applied. These are how you would typically think of presets. And they also have them from the Dehancer team. You can save your own presets. And then they have featured ones as well. I think these are from the community because you can see where it says by and it's different people. However, I prefer to work within the film profiles. So I'm gonna put this back to original, and I'm going to come over here to profiles and enable that. Now these are the real film simulations. So they have a variety of film types: color negative, motion picture, color positive, black and white, instant, exotic, cross, or you can look at all of them at once. So for example, if I want something like this, but what I'm gonna do is just go back to all films and kind of scroll until I see some that look interesting. I will say one thing that I like about this is that they don't look like presets, if that makes sense. Sometimes when you apply film simulations to your images, they just look so intense and so unnatural, which is something I like about film, right? Is that it still looks natural, but it has like a stylization to it. And I think that's very, very hard to get with film presets. So I do think it looks really good in black and white. And it's crazy because this actually like looks like a black and white image. You know what? Maybe let's do this in black and white. So this right here is really interesting. When you're shooting film, you can push or pull. And if none of this makes sense, they have a guide. If you haven't shot film before, also don't worry about it. Anyway, what's so interesting is that within each film profile, there's 3 different profiles as well using this push-pull. Now, I like it a little bit more contrast on this one because the lighting's so beautiful and he looks so cute and mysterious. You have all of these tools that you can use on the right, similar to what you might do in Lightroom, to then modify the film simulation even further. Now, these are going to look very different if you've never worked with or developed film before. Definitely look at Dehancer's quick start guide because they actually explain how they work. But if you just want to get jumping in, just move them left to right and you can typically see what the difference is. Honestly, I think this one looks good just straight. I want to show you these actually on another one. So this is how this looks. I think it looks fantastic. Now, you'll see that we have 2 copies of the photo. We have our original raw file, and then we have a variant over here that has our adjustments from Dehancer. Let's look at this image because it is a little bit of a challenging one because there is so much contrast within it. So what I'm gonna do is prepare it for Dehancer, go back over here to Styles, do my film extra shadow, and then what I'm gonna do is add a filled adjustment layer. The layers are something I really love about Capture One versus Lightroom, for example. And then I'm going to come in and play around with my exposure and high dynamic range a little bit, just so I can get some of those highlights, but not too much because I still want it to like have contrast. So that, I just took out a little bit of contrast. Once again, we are going to right click, edit with Dehancer Lightroom plugin. Okay, so last time I showed you these profiles, if you go in and you make a bunch of tweaks, you can save them as presets over here. And that's what some of these other ones are. It's those profiles with different presets. Ooh, I actually love the way that looks. But let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna take those off, go back to my profiles, add my film profile, and let's just kind of scroll and see if there's any that catch my eye. I want this to be a very warm photo because that is the energy I felt at that time. And I want to represent that in this photo. Let me go to my color negative and find my go-to Kodak. It's funny because like the film emulation preset I always use ACR 100, but in this it looks really blue. So I'm gonna do this gold. And then let me look at Velvia really quick and see how that looks. Okay, do we like Velvia or do we like Kodak Gold? Velvia, Kodak Gold. Actually, let's do this Velvia. I think it's a little pink, so now we're gonna come over here into Source and I'm going to adjust the temperature to be a little warmer. And then I'm gonna take the tint and make it a little bit more green. Let's go through and play with this contrast boost, because I did take some contrast out. Color boost might be like, ooh, I do like that. I like it colorful. Okay, film compression. Ooh, look at what that did. We have a more contrasty image, and then when I click film compression, it brings out a lot in the highlights and a lot in those shadows. And what you can do as well is you'll see a lot impact. So this controls the intensity of this. I'm gonna move it like that, and then I still like a little contrast in that white point, so I'm gonna move that there. Tonal range. Expansion. Once again, this is my black point. I want a little more contrast. I'm gonna bring that black point over. And when you're working with this, really subtle changes is what look best. Now, this is an interesting one because this is your glossy paper. So remember how I said each of these has a push and a pull that you can do with this? Here is another way to alter the look. So you have this glossy paper, which is what you're typically gonna see. Then we have a print film from Kodak and a print film from Fuji, as well as like a log. But that's also another, like, you just get so many options in here, and I do think they all look really nice and natural. So here is our color head. We can shift all of the yellow and blues towards those. We can shift overall tone towards magenta and green, as well as cyan and red, or we can come in and just affect the shadows tone, like down at the bottom. And once again, you have this impact down here. So if you want to change the intensity of it, you can't tell right now, but let's say I put the red really high. If you want to change the intensity of every adjustment you've made in this module, you can do that as well. I'm not a big fan of film grain, so I typically would not add this, and I'm just going to turn it off, but the option is there. I think these two settings have got to be the coolest. Halation and bloom. And these are something that I have never seen replicated in just your standard preset. I've only seen them done well in Dehancer. So let me show you, because this is like the perfect photo for this. So let's look at halation first. Halation is going to add a redness to the highlights. Do you see that kind of like red halo around that? That is what halation will do. Now bloom is similar, but it's gonna add that kind of like hazy look to the highlights rather than the red one. Here's what it looks like with it. You can see it really well around this pharmacia. And it just has that beautiful hazy quality. I have never been able to replicate this in Lightroom, so it just looks so good in this. This is the part I'm really excited about. So if I zoom in again on this, let's show you closer. Here is that bloom. What I'm gonna do is zoom out, because I like to see my photos small. And let's add a little bit of halation. I'm gonna come down and impact and turn that down. And then let's add a bit of bloom, because in these like high contrast images, I think that really, really just like takes it over the edge and gives it that film look. And I'm gonna take it down just a little so it's more subtle. Now, if I wanted to do this and save all of these settings again, I believe I can come over here to presets at the top and press this plus button. And I'm gonna call it Regan, like that, add preset. So now when I enter Dehancer again, I have all presets, or I have my presets right here. And if I wanted to, I believe I could also heart this, because there is a favorites list. Let me see, if I go here, I don't see where to heart this. I know you can heart them in profiles like this. Say I like this and I click heart, then I can see it while I'm scrolling like this. Wonder if I come to presets, favorites. Yeah, it's interesting that there's a favorites here, but I can't figure out how to heart that. So that's a little confusing. Anyway, this is our edit. Let's click OK. And now when we come back to Capture One, we can see the original here and my edit here. And I think those two look really, really good. I love that these presets just look so natural. Like they don't look like a crazy different thing than the original image, which I love, because sometimes presets just distort your images so much that it looks completely different. Okay, so whether you're doing this in Capture One or in Lightroom Classic, it's gonna be the same thing. One thing I do not like about editing these images in Lightroom and Capture One is that I can't go back and adjust my opacity or use my layers. Like there's no way for me to apply this as an adjustment layer, because this is what I would typically do. I would go to my styles and let's use one of these built-in styles. Let's say spring. I like the spring too. So then I'm gonna right click and apply to new layer. And so now what I can do is I can go in and make adjustments. I can still go in and adjust my like exposure and contrast. And this is how I like to edit my images in Capture One. I feel like because it saves a virtual copy or a variant, that I have to make all my adjustments before I go into Dehancer. And then it's also hard to apply to this to like a huge amount of images. So here is a workaround that I found, and we're gonna do that using Photoshop. Let's come over here to open, and I'm just going to browse on my computer and find an image that I want. Okay, now when I open a raw image, it's gonna open first here in Adobe Camera Raw, and there are processing recommendations from Dehancer. What I'm gonna do is just kind of make this flat. They suggest using Adobe Standard, and then I actually don't remember. Anyway, there are suggestions, but you don't need to worry about it with this little trick. So what I'm gonna do is reduce my contrast, bring my shadows up a little bit so they're not so bright or so contrasty, my darkness. And then I do like my images like colorful, so I'm gonna bring up vibrance and saturation. And then what you need to pay attention to is this down here. Rather than open, what we're gonna do is open as object. So now you see over here on the right, this is a smart object. So what I'm gonna do is go to Filter, Dehancer, Dehancer Film. Now remember how I said in the other one that it makes this virtual copy, and so I don't really have control over that initial image. If I decide I wanna make tweaks, there's not really much I can do. This is a workaround. So here, I'm going to go to my color negative, where I typically have some faves. See, I'm not a big fan of the way these look on like studio images, but I think that's just me. Let's go ahead and do maybe, it's not to say that they don't look like film, I just don't like the way they look on these type of images. Let's do our Kodak Gold. Let me see what it looks like if I push or pull. Okay, then I'm gonna come up to my source and I'm gonna warm up the image. Maybe a little more, I want more, I don't really know how to do saturation boost. I think it's this one, color boost. Okay, that actually looks good, okay. All right, okay, wait, maybe I changed my mind. Maybe I do like the way these look. Let me see some other ones. No, I think that would be like, do we like that? That's kind of cool. Okay, let's do that. Let's try something like this. So far, I like the way this looks. Before, after. I think I've surprised myself. I like this. Okay. Now, let's say that I want to go back to that original source file and I want to change something in the raw processing. I like this method because you can go back to Adobe Camera Raw, make changes, and you can go back in Dehancer Film and make changes back and forth. So let me show you. If I double click on that smart object, Adobe Camera Raw opens back up. So let's say I want it to be a little bit warmer, like, let's do an extreme example like that. I press OK, and boom, the Dehancer plugin then affects that. So let's go back to this and let's take off that insane warmth and let's just take it to maybe like this, okay? Great. And now if I want to go in and change Dehancer again, I double click on that and I can bring it up and then go back and make some more of these changes. So actually, I prefer this method, which is using Adobe Camera Raw, opening it as a smart object, making adjustments in Dehancer, because you can go back and forth between them, which you cannot do in Capture One or in Lightroom, unfortunately, because it creates a virtual copy or it creates a variant. If there is a way to get around this, please let me know. But for now, I think this is the best method. yeah, I think this is the best method for now. If you're not someone who edits on the computer, I used this during my trip and I really liked it. So let's go ahead and look at that as well. I have this video from my trip that I edited and shared on Instagram, and people were like, how did you edit that? What did you use? And I used the Dehancer app on my iPhone. So I want to show you what that looks like and what like kind of crazy results you can achieve with it. So this is just the video. It's straight from my iPhone. I didn't do anything to it. I wish actually that I could send it straight from my camera roll to Dehancer, but I have not found a way to do that, unfortunately. Same as before, you have edit, which is similar to the film profiles. So you can come in here and you can go through and choose your films again. Ooh, this looks so good on these. Let me show you an example. And you can press play here so that you can stop at an important frame, like maybe that one, so I can see how it will look on the most important part. Or what you can do is go over here to presets and see how they look on your video. So this is one that I've made called Kodak Gold 200 Test. Wait, I made that earlier. How funny. And then you can scroll through until you see one that catches your eye. I have favorited some of these. Let's do this one. And then you can go in and edit again. So we're gonna start with our source, our temp comp. It's a little pink for me. Okay, back to our developer. Do we want more contrast? Do we want less contrast? Like so, let's do a little less contrast. And then I'm gonna do a color boost, so it's just a little bit more vibrant. My compression, and see how that changed the image. If you wanna turn it off, you just press and hold, and it'll turn that whole thing off. Let's go to our color head. Let's bring it a little more magenta maybe. And let's add some halation, because I think this looks so cool. Let's reduce it a little, lower the impact. And then to our bloom as well, and just lower the impact. And then you can see how this looks. Like, it is crazy to me that you can get this out of an iPhone video. I really like this. And one unique thing about the iPhone app is that you can edit video and photos, but on your computer, there's a photo plugin, but then there's a separate video plugin as well. It's different. Once you go to export it, you have, I think, 10 free things to export. Then there are subscriptions. I hate that this is subscription based because I hate subscription software, anything. That's like my biggest irk. So I do like that they have the option for a one-time purchase. However, it is very expensive. So you need to think about how often you're going to use this. Maybe it is really high quality, but it is very expensive for mobile presets. As for my thoughts on the Capture One and the Photoshop plugin, I really like them. The only criticism I have is that it is a plugin rather than a preset, and I am sure that is how they get it to look so natural. But because of, like, I wish I could just take that result from Capture One that it outputs as a separate TIFF and somehow put that as a layer over the original raw image. I think that's the biggest issue with it, is trying to figure out how it would fit into my workflow. And of course, it does not work with Lightroom Mobile, which is how I typically edit when I'm on the go. So they do offer the iPhone app, which I really like, but it's not included as an option if you've already bought the photo one on desktop. So if you want both, it's two separate costs. Now let's go to the elephant in the room, which is always, how expensive is it? For the photo plugin that you can use in Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, Affinity, it is $199. Which is expensive, but I have to say, I think that is a good price for a photo plugin, because with another company, I spend $100 on 3 presets, and those only work in one program. So with that company, I've spent $200 buying the same presets for Lightroom and for Capture One. So to me, The price for this is really, really good, especially with how powerful it is and the fact that you get 63 options and you can use it in any of those photo programs. I think that's a good deal. For the iPhone, I think it's really, 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 really expensive for the iPhone app. I would love to see that be a little bit cheaper, or for the lifetime purchase to be $200 rather than $400. That's my only criticism. But otherwise, I really like it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you're unsure about this, one thing I also really like is that they do have a free trial. So you can download a free trial of the plugin, play around with it, see if it's for you before you end up purchasing, which you're not always able to. Those are my thoughts on Dehancer. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.